Welcome back to the channel, everybody. I hope you guys are doing well. Thanks for joining today. We're on the GR&I, and this is actually the first time I'm ever showing a video of me building anything. So I decided it's time to start the expansion. Now that I've got everything currently, or at least that I've currently built, I've got it all operating in a way I like. It's now time to get the line to Kalamazoo and other points south. To be fair, when I start to build this in the future, this is where I will build some track around the side here, but then I'll double deck it, and then we'll run it back, back over itself. And trains can't really do that, so it's going to look a bit wumpy as I expand it even further beyond what you'll see in the video today, but we're not going to worry too much about that. What matters is the concept. We're going to proof the concept, and that's the whole point of me building this in the simulator. Been having a great time operating it. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed the videos and the shorts and everything. But one thing I wanted to add is river crossings, creeks, bridges, all those shenanigans in a lot of different places. And that's just because there's a lot of rivers up there, a lot of creeks all over the place. So we're gonna have more of those things. I'm not going to have too much elevation change on the main line, so, as a model railroad, it'll stay mostly flat. But we'll have land rising above and below at places. And then, of course, that's when I realized that I screwed up, but it's all good. No big deal. We're going to find an adjustment to that. We're going to move on. And here, I wanted to redo this lift out. Now, in trains, you also are not able to animate the lift out. It's kind of sad. But I wanted to use a bridge asset that is just as high detailed, but not as massive. It's funny because I ended up changing my mind as I was doing this in real time. So I ended up keeping the massive 250-foot span, and instead I just replaced these deck trusses with girders. So had to do a little custom bridge building here, a little finagling, but that's okay. So use the RRTK bridge track and then laid in the BDW girder bridge under it, and just kind of made it fit in a way that looks good enough. And I did not connect these girder bridges to the actual track, so as the trains go across, they won't actually ride on the track for that girder bridge, even though it's sitting there. And it's, not perfect, but it's seamless enough that it gets the job done without giving it away. But now that you've seen it, now you know. Here I was being dumb and trying to make that fit, only to realize it wasn't going to work. All right. I'm going to throw in a few details here. I'm not going to eventually add too much detail in this video. Most of this video is just going to be kind of roughing out the pieces and getting the track in and everything. I'll come back in some later videos over time and add in some of the later details. You gotta know how it goes with me by this point. I'll get the track in, get the layout in, get everything operating, get it all in GR&I, test it forever, see if I like it, and then after that we'll come in and actually start doing some scenery. So scenery, while it's nice, is always pretty much the last thing I do. More or less kind of like what I would do if I was building this in real life. So I was a bit disappointed to see these piers sticking down below. So because of that, I decided I would go ahead and just add in fascia, even though it technically is a lift out section, and I didn't want there to be any fascia under it. I decided that under the circumstances, I'd rather not look at those piers sticking out below the landscape there. So we're going to add in the fascia. I guess it's not technically fascia. The asset is called fascia, but technically it's the curtain that goes below the fascia. The fascia is technically the little wall that I use, but I don't really like to get into semantics, so nitpick me in the comments. No, it's okay, I'm just kidding. But yeah, so anyways, I had to compromise here. It is what it is. At the end of the day, compromises in simulators are not a problem for me personally. It literally doesn't bother me because I know that right now with the stage I'm in life, this is my only way to really get the model right now, and so I'm making the best of it, and I'm not regretting it at all, and I'm really enjoying it. Plus, just the GR&I operations are just so lovely in my opinion. I just really can't get over it. How much I enjoy those. So, once again, the water was kind of a limiting factor there, so I just use a spline. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. I will come back way later, way in the future, and I'll add in some more detail. So, figured I'd go ahead and just throw in the rest of the curtains here to get everything nailed down on that part. Get it finished up. But I wanted to go ahead at this point and start talking about what we're actually doing with this expansion. So we're going to Kalamazoo, and between Grand Rapids and Kalamazoo, there were a couple of, small railroad towns, and there were 2 railroad towns that were relative size, and I forgot their names. One started with a W and one started with a P. And I'll get their names in there at some point. But essentially, I decided I was going to add these 2 towns. They'd have a couple of industries, but within the 2 towns themselves, it would mostly be industries that take anywhere from like 2 to 4 cars, no more than that, at these industries. And it's things like, little team track, freight house, coal and fuel, lumber supply, that kind of stuff. And a co-op here and there, for loading some grain or stock or, different things from the area. Milk. This section of the road is where I'm going to do a lot of the places that load milk, which will be nice. And then the other thing I wanted to do is I wanted to have 5, I'm not going to say major industries, but 5 sizable industries between the 2 towns. And these are not necessarily based on any sort of prototype. They're not even in, or I'm not even pretending to put them in a prototype location. I'm just modeling industries that sort of more or less would have existed in the area and that I need on the railroad in order to get different carloads that I need. It is 54, so, not everything is shipped across country to make money. There are still some short hauls, and so, some of these short hauls are less than 100 miles, and I'm sure the railroad doesn't make a ton of money. But it's still money nonetheless, and it's online industries, so they're not hard to get to. And essentially with these 5 industries, I'm going to run a way freight that goes to Kalamazoo and back to Grand Rapids. I'll just build it one way at a time, and of course that means I'll have a track or 2 in Kalamazoo for holding cars. Grand Rapids Yard doesn't technically have space for it, ironically. So I'm going to use the 9th track, the loop track, in order to store some cars. That, or I might, take some footage away from some of the other tracks that are a bit longer than they need to be and don't really ever get filled up. So I'm still thinking about how I want to do it in Grand Rapids. But Kalamazoo, I've got some tracks planned out that will make the operation feasible, especially if I, mostly build it out of Kalamazoo. And if I end up not liking what's going on in Grand Rapids, I can always just make it where it doesn't terminate there. It just goes to Grand Rapids and turns and goes back, and then problem solved. So I can do that if I have to. But what we're going to do is we're going to build the tracks here, and we're going to get some track marks down and get some of the industries down. And I'm going to list the industries in order, but it's not necessarily going to sync up with what you're seeing built in front of you. But this here is more or less technically the 3rd of the 5 industries, because the first 2 were back at that previous control point. But another thing I wanted between Grand Rapids and Kalamazoo was 3 control points. And so we've already passed one. Here to the left is going to be the 2nd one, and then we'll get to the 3rd one after that. So having those 3 between the 2 cities will help me, of course, let trains get past each other and also to simulate some distance. All right, let's pull up my list here, and then let's get to reading off and talking about those 5 industries. All right, so once again, in no particular order, because right now I don't remember the order that I put them in. Here's what we have. We have a steel merchandiser. Now, that one I do remember. I put that at that first control point, so we've already seen that being built while I was talking about something else. It basically takes steel in bulk to be sold locally, and then it ships out scrap. Next up is pretty sure I put the lumber and wood supply next over there on that first control point as well. I don't have a name for that location yet. The lumber and wood supply basically just takes lumber, beams, and other heavy wood items in, and then empties out. So That's it. It's not going to load anything there. It's just going to be a terminal industry that accepts loads. And since I'm running unit lumber trains from the north, a lot of those cars are going to end up going there, which is fine. There's a furniture mill. I do believe the furniture mill is the last one that's going to get built. So I think next up actually was the textile mill. And that just takes cotton, wools, dyes, and chemicals. They go in. That's at the second control point, which I guess technically we haven't built yet because I'm getting the table ready for that right now. That's what you're seeing there on screen. So yeah, it looks like I've started it. Yeah, here we go. So we're building it again. So the textile mill is at the other end of the spur, the one that we've already come from. Yeah, back there. So I'm going to go add another track to that in just a minute. And the big thing I wanted to do here was make sure that it produced whatever fabric was needed in order to go to Muskegon, where Acme Bedding is. And so it's more like an intermediate industry that serves businesses like Acme Bedding, where they make, the polished and the silky fabrics and all the nice stuff. So this is like a bulk fabric manufacturer that then ships it out to a bunch of other industries. Now, Acme Bedding is the only industry on the layout that will take that. The rest will go to staging. But, it lets me run a car from here. It would have to, the way the train's running, it'd have to go to Kalamazoo, get put on the train going back to Grand Rapids, and it'd go to Grand Rapids, then it would go to Muskegon. Then Muskegon would set it out. Yeah, so that's, once it loads, it's got to get on 4 trains. That's awesome. Love that. All right, next up, which we'll see in the future, is an auto parts factory. So once again, it's Michigan in the 1950s, so there's auto parts everywhere. We got steel coming in, coal coming in, aluminum coming in, chemicals, and then we're shipping out auto parts. I don't remember what part of the auto parts supply chain I wanted to model with this one. I don't remember what I was thinking, but we're not going to worry about that because I just kind of have like auto parts as a load, and I'm just going to kind of leave it at that. I'm not going to go too far into trying to simulate an organized supply chain for any of this stuff, really. There are several industries that take auto parts. There's team tracks that take them to simulate, smaller industries that take different types of smaller auto parts and make other auto parts, but I'm not modeling like GM or Ford or any of these major auto manufacturers. I'm not modeling a massive automotive facility. So it's just the intermediate facilities scattered throughout Michigan that I'm modeling. And then once again, last up, which we're going to get to here pretty soon, is going to be the furniture mill. Oh, but I remember there is one more after this. The furniture mill is going to take hardwood in, so hardwood lumber, which is going to be its own load that comes from staging. It's going to take fasteners, adhesives, light machinery, and then it's going to ship out furniture. And that furniture can go, any sort of team track anywhere, warehouses, distribution, stuff like that, That one's going to be the last industry in the town that's going to be around the corner from where I'm building right now. Oh, look at that. I built some hills. I forgot about that. Added some hills. And then the last of the 5 industries is a co-op facility. So textile, auto parts, furniture. Yeah, sure enough. So actually it's 6 industries. My bad. That's why I was confused. So we have a co-op facility. And this is, like I said, there are small ones in the town, the 2 towns. But this is where I'm modeling a little bit bigger one. And this one loads out stock cars with pigs. It loads out grain. And then it receives grain and feed. So, yes, I know we're shipping grain and receiving grain. That's just more or less simulating that we're receiving a different type of grain than we ship. For example, if they're raising stock, then they're probably feeding them corn. Corn, I don't think, grows super well in all parts of Michigan, but wheat does. So, we would be shipping corn in and we would be shipping wheat out. But they're both technically grain crops, and I don't really want to specify, so we're going to call it grains. So that's where the co-op's going to be, right there. I eventually add a few more tracks to it, and I also am going to have a space there to load milk, raw milk, that is. So Kalamazoo is going to have a dairy processor. And I'm going to have different places on this leg of the layout where we load or gather reefers with raw milk, and we ship them to the processor. So that was a big part of Michigan's industrial heritage in this time as well. All right, this is me making the next corner of the layout. This will be one edge of it, actually, so there won't be any further expansion beyond that curve to the left of the screen. It will just double back next to everything that I've built all the way around next to Muskegon over there where I put the staging yard. This would be a great place where I would put the helix. If I were going to build this in real life, I would have the helix right here. Probably would not double track that helix though. Probably would just have a single track helix, and then right at the top of it, I would have the other control point probably. It's probably what I would do, I think. And then, yeah, then it would kind of, work its way back up around about 15 feet beyond the image here would be where Kalamazoo is. And then you'd have, about 60 feet of track space to work with to run the leg of the layout south of Kalamazoo to staging that I'm going to have. So I've got a really nice setup for that later. First, I'm going to get to Kalamazoo, get Kalamazoo all functioning, and get the yard set up and proofed up like I like. The Kalamazoo yard is going to be far busier than Grand Rapids yard. In fact, when I build this in the real world, Kalamazoo is probably going to definitely have to have 3 separate operators. The yard master to keep it all organized, a drill and a trim crew, and then the yard master probably will run the one local that's there in Kalamazoo instead of 2 like Grand Rapids, so those get to be separate crews. But that'll be a wild yard. But I'm really excited about it because I like yards on model railroads, and I have a really good idea of how I want to set it up. We're going to manage some interchanges with other railroads there instead of in Grand Rapids, and so that functionality is going to be really cool just to get to see how all the different railroads will interact together. So, but that will be at an indefinite moment in the future. I've got to get the layout caught up to that first. So we're going to get this part done, get to the yard, get it all in GR&I, get it the way I like it, and then we'll finish up to run the staging. Have no idea when that will be because I've been working on the Cox and Sub. We're going to get back to doing more of the Cox and Sub to make sure I stay on track with getting that released this year. So this is me getting all the different spurs in for, I believe this is the auto parts right here, and then the furniture was around, it's just around the bend up there next to the co-op, but technically behind the backdrop. So I'm pretty sure that was the auto parts. Yeah, and then I think I put the furniture factory right here. So good stuff. Anyways, this has been fun. I haven't done a build video in a while. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. If it bores you to death, I apologize. Yes, I didn't do any pretty scenery. Please forgive me. Maybe I'll record that in the future too. I've got a really good palette that's working well for me that I like. So enjoy. Let me know if there's something you'd like to ask about or would like to know, or if there's something you'd like to see. I'm always happy to hear those things. Can't promise I'll deliver, but I always like to hear them. It's good to know kind of where you guys are at. All right. We'll catch you guys out there next time. See you around.